Gotcha. Well, guys, we're going to jump right into the painting. For these little models, I'm going to treat them anything like the same I would do with a miniature. And I'm going to do the old Xenator lighting, which is basically giving it a dark base at the bottom to sort of give the idea of a sort of shadow. And then on the top side, we're going to hit it with a nice white. And this will just sort of help sell the idea that later when we put our base coat in, it's going to be, at a lighter level, and we should be able to sort of see, that come through. So we get that sort of contrast of a light side and a dark side. And it generally works really, really well. But I've never done it on these sort of spaceships things before, so I'm kind of interested to see how this will turn out. And I definitely love the excuse to pull out the airbrush and give it a whirl. It's always a fun process of the painting, so any excuse to bring it out is always a good one. So with the grey painter, I'm using Tamiya paints, and I think it was, I actually ran out and threw it out. So I can't remember exactly the color I end up using, but I think it was like a light sea grey from Tamiya. And I generally really enjoy these paints because they give this sort of really nice, strong matte finish, like a military matte finish. And I just really like the way that the light behaves on these sort of models. Now, we definitely want to go light with that coat because, again, just earlier when I mentioned about how strong you go, you're trying to sort of maintain this dark and light side, and the base coat you're doing is really just sort of an additive effect without kind of washing out those previous colors. And, you kind of get this sort of nice sort of shadow and light effect. So definitely go with a steady hand. Don't try and do too much. And if you feel like you go too far, then you might have to repeat the first process. So definitely do it in small, simple stages. And definitely lighter is the way to go. Now moving into the part that I despise the most, which is masking. And I hadn't realized I came across this sort of sticky rubbery tape that it basically allows you to kind of conform over the surfaces. And I bought this just before my first son was born. So it's about 12 years old at this point. So, its adhesiveness to the plastic was questionable at best. And I thought rather than spending a very long time going through masking every single little part to paint, I thought I'd just do one first. We'll just test it out. Otherwise, it's just going to be a waste of time if the sticky tape itself is not really adhering, and you lift it and then you realize you get some sort of paint spills. Spoiler alert, it definitely spilled through. And I was rather frustrated at this point thinking, oh, great, now I've got, 7 more ships to do. And it wasn't even like a nice sort of clean, smooth, finish. Not what I was really looking for. Well, one thing about masking, I will say that is always satisfying just to lift that and remove it. But yeah, unfortunately, I had some sort of spills with it. So in the end, I think I kind of wanted to kind of give it a crack of just doing some freehand. And this is something that I'm not very comfortable with, but I really sort of just weighed up this idea of like spending a long time doing the masking or just go by hand. And honestly, going by hand, even though I'm kind of frustrated with some of the results that I got out of it, I know that I can always go back over with the similar sort of gray tone of the base color and make some corrections. So it's not all bad, but I despise masking with a passion. Now, some of you clever few, you're saying, Dean, you handsome fella, you aren't following the same paint scheme as the shirt. I'm like, yeah, I came back to that masking. I didn't want to kind of redirect those angles to make it the same. So I decided to save myself a bunch of paint and just keep the lines simple and go up and down. Now, guys, we're going to enter in the absolute fun phase. This is where you're becoming or starting as an amateur painter and you go from zero to hero. So this is basically an enamel, pin wash. And the general idea is that you basically just dab it into the areas that you want the wash to kind of go over. It'll obviously hit up against those walls and crevices and it'll sort of stop itself from running. But yeah, it's a great process. And as long as you kind of keep it fairly neat and tidy, it's a really, honestly, this is the thing that makes it look good. And definitely there's so many ways to control this, and I can't recommend this enough. And the idea is that if you do kind of go out and spill it, which inevitably it does, basically the idea is that you're going to go back over it with, a subtle amount of white spirit. Because it's enamel, it should kind of just sort of lift it off, but you've got to be doing it almost dry. So you want a little bit on, take it off, and then you can use it to slowly remove the excess when it kind of spills over, which it always does. But this will end up, adding to kind of like the grunge and the effects. So it works really well. Like, I cannot recommend it enough to anyone who's out there who hasn't tried it. So I particularly prefer this over a standard sort of acrylic wash, just because it kind of, it's easy to control. Acrylic sometimes can dry a little bit too quickly, whereas this can dry for a little while, but I can still go back over that white spirit and just lift it off. The only part of caution when you're doing this and you're kind of, beginning to kind of erase it, you just want to make sure that you're not pushing too hard with that brush. Otherwise, you could lift off the bottom paint as well. So just be cautious with that. But yeah, the results basically speak for themselves. Look at the contrast between the first and the second, before and after. So that pretty much almost kind of completes the Jupiter. It's more or less the exact same process for the rest of the ships. Go over them and then just sort of lightly clean it up there. Nothing, fantastic or really, unimaginative here to kind of look at or understand. Just go simple, go slow, go simple. Even like the windows there you just saw in the Viper, I end up sort of just dabbing a little bit in the middle there, and it just went straight to those corners and recessed it, and that was basically it. I didn't have to touch it any further. Just going to wrap it up here with the Genesis, more or less the same process, but you can see exactly what it's doing. As soon as it just hits those corners and crevices, the paint just immediately runs into those those trenches, those grooves and crevices. But yeah, definitely feel free to kind of use like the Q-tip there, but you just got to be cautious because again, if you push a bit too hard, it will lift that bottom paint up. So just be cautious with that. But I use this sometimes where I want to kind of just remove it almost back to the base gray color and get rid of that wash completely, because you don't want it to be all like looking grunge. You need that kind of breakup. Otherwise, it'll just look like a complete mess. But yeah, this is a fun one, so I highly recommend it if you've never done it before. It's also really useful on those little tiny details that you just want to sort of lift out there, like at the back of the pipes there. That's super useful. But yeah, very happy with the results. And then straight on over to the orbital, which again, I skipped a video on this one. I didn't think you guys are going to find it too interesting, so I just sort of raced ahead here. But, kind of the design itself, I can't remember what I grabbed, but there was some sort of useful ideas out there within the Battlestar, Galactica, wikis and things. And I kind of just went for this sort of round orbital. Same sort of principles as the ships, because again, this is a part of a board game and a fleet, and I'm not trying to imitate, the actual TV show per se. You still got to want to kind of give these things to be kind of grounded and consistent with the rest of them. Otherwise, if you introduce too many colors and things, when you kind of see other fleets and other ships, it can be kind of confusing who's who, because maybe some of the similarities are quite, the same across different, races and factions. So same sort of process and techniques here. I'm here with this, I'm going a little bit more liberal with the actual pin wash, but again, just sort of knocking it back. And, as you kind of see fit to with the white spirit, and you're basically done. Look at my shaky cam, looks just like the show. Guys, if you want to download these miniatures for yourself, head over to my Patreon. Definitely go have some fun with them. I'm looking forward to playing Eclipse with them. I'm certainly going to be a lot more motivated with my dice rolls. All right, guys, I'll see you next time.